The head coach for your Fever and Eastern Conference Coach of the Month, Stephanie White.
That's one dude. That's literally one dude.
God, I wish they'd fire her already.
That's just one dude. Oh my god. Is that all it was? Oh my god, they're talking about nothing. If you hear the background, it's like one dude booing. Oh my god, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? The actual footage I've seen. Are you kidding me? It's one person.
That changes the entire story, because after days of talk about Stephanie White being booed at home, the actual footage sounds very different from the picture people had in their heads. And once you hear it, the bigger question becomes whether this controversy was ever really about the crowd at all.
Like, can we be real here? Can we be real here? There is literally footage of her staring at what happened. Like, even in real time here. Like, there is footage of her. There's footage of her, like, staring at what happened. While saying she never saw it. Everybody, including Sophie Cunningham, knows that she saw it.
That is where this gets messy. The argument against White is not simply that she said something fans disliked. The frustration is that people believe there is visual evidence contradicting how she described what happened around Sophie Cunningham. If a coach says she did not see a play clearly, but viewers believe the replay shows her looking directly toward it, every later explanation gets filtered through that one credibility question. And keep that in mind, because the part that matters most comes later. This stopped being a debate about one foul and turned into a test of how much trust exists between the Fever, their coach, their players, and their own audience.
I'm sorry, from a fan perspective, and I get it, I'm pretty sure every single player on the Indiana Fever team likes Stephanie White. Clearly behind the scenes, she's done a good job with them. And that's all that matters at the end of the day, is that behind the scenes, is that like, she's actually a good coach. Like, that is what matters. Like, we can say what we want. That being said, dealing with fans, talking in the press is part of being a coach. Like, that's part of being a coach. And Stephanie White
And there is an important distinction in that clip. You can think Stephanie White is doing a good job inside the locker room while also thinking she handles public communication badly. Those are not contradictory positions. Coaching is rotations, schemes, preparation, player development, game management, and relationships. But when you become the head coach of one of the most scrutinized teams in women's basketball, media communication is part of the job too. Every injury update, every explanation after a controversial play, every comment about the fan base carries more weight because this is not a quiet franchise anymore. Indiana operates under a microscope. That is why this story has become bigger than a normal coaching debate. White's players can genuinely love playing for her. She can genuinely protect them behind closed doors. Fans can still dislike how she explains things publicly. All three can be true at once. The mistake is pretending the only two options are that White is either a fantastic coach who should never be criticized or a disaster who should immediately be fired. The real issue sits in the middle, and that middle is where the tension keeps growing.
Turns the fans against her because she creates the stories. Like, Stephanie White wants to talk about, oh, you know, these narratives need to stop and people won't divide us. Like, I'm gonna be real here. Stephanie White causes these stories. And look again, it is so annoying. Stephanie White for me is the most annoying head coach to have. Like, a lot of people, I don't think she's a bad coach. I don't think Stephanie White needs to be fired on the spot or anything. I don't think that she's the worst coach in the world, which people do. But I do think with Stephanie White that you can't be the one to create the storm and then complain about the storm.
That line about creating the storm is the heart of the criticism. White's public approach often appears designed to lower the temperature, but sometimes the wording creates more questions than it settles. That is especially dangerous in a market where fans are already watching every press conference looking for inconsistencies. Once trust becomes the subject, even harmless phrasing starts getting dissected. And think about the timing. Indiana has been winning. The roster has stayed competitive through injuries and pressure. Caitlin Clark has publicly backed her coach. The organization has publicly backed its coach. Under normal circumstances, those things should cool everything down. Instead, one press conference, one disputed interpretation of what White saw, and one comment telling outsiders where they can go became a multi-day story. That does not happen because the basketball is irrelevant. It happens because the relationship between this franchise and its fan base is unusually intense. There is also a strategic problem here. If White tries to shut down every controversy immediately, she risks saying too much before all the information is clear. If she says too little, people accuse her of hiding something. That is the reality of coaching this team now. The solution is not pretending the pressure does not exist. The solution is becoming extremely precise, because vague reassurance has a short shelf life when people can compare every statement with video, injury reports, and what eventually happens on the court.
And it's clear what Stephanie White's trying to do. She is trying to diffuse, she's trying to diffuse every situation. But like, when she tries to diffuse a situation by lying, like we heard it with Caitlin Clark's injury last year. We heard about Chloe Bibby's injury. Chloe Bibby's fine. She's fine. Just a little bit of swelling. It's normal. She's fine. There's no injury. No new timeline. Nothing's gone worse. She's fine. And then we find out Chloe Bibby's out for 4 months with a knee injury. With Caitlin Clark last year. Caitlin Clark, you know, oh, there's no setbacks. It's all good. She fucked up her ankle real bad. Again, she was out for 3 months with an ankle injury. And all we got is no setback, or no setbacks. Everything's good. Everything's good. No setbacks.
Now we get to the pattern that explains why some fans are so skeptical. The speaker brings up previous injury messaging and argues that reassuring language did not always match what happened afterward. Some of those details are presented here as his interpretation of earlier situations, so they should not automatically be treated as proof that anyone intentionally misled the public. Medical timelines change. Players can feel better one day, and worse the next. Teams also have competitive reasons not to reveal every detail, but the perception still matters. If fans repeatedly hear optimistic language and then watch a player remain unavailable, they stop treating reassurance as reassurance. They start treating it as public relations language. That is where White has a communication problem, even if the underlying medical decisions are completely legitimate. And this is exactly why credibility is so difficult to rebuild once people begin questioning it. A coach does not have to be caught deliberately lying for fans to lose confidence in the message. Sometimes all it takes is a series of statements that age badly. Then every future statement becomes a referendum on the old ones. That matters more with Caitlin Clark than with almost any player in the league, because the attention around her is enormous. Fans want immediate information. Networks want immediate information. Opposing teams want information. The Fever are trying to protect the player and their competitive position while also feeding a public appetite that cannot really be satisfied. White is standing in the middle of that collision, and every answer gets judged as if she has perfect information in real time.
What exactly does she think is going to happen in these scenarios? And I get it from a player's perspective, you want to have your coaches back, because it genuinely does seem from everyone's perspective that she's got their back behind the scenes. And she's got their back behind the scenes. But like, she starts fires publicly. Stephanie White is starting public fires and complaining about getting burnt. Like, that is what she's doing. And if she's intentionally doing it, I don't know. But like, there's a video when Caitlin was out this year with the back injury. They were like, nope, she's not injured. There's no back injury. She's not injured. And I was just there like, wait, you're saying she's not injured, and why isn't she playing? And we find out, yeah, she is injured.
Listen carefully to the contradiction he is describing. Behind the scenes, White appears to have earned substantial loyalty from the people who actually work with her. Publicly, some fans feel they are getting answers that create more confusion. That split is the key to understanding why the players' reaction has been so strong. From their perspective, they are not defending a press conference quote. They are defending the person they see every day. They know the practices, the private conversations, the film sessions, the injury management, and the support that fans never see. So when supporters judge White based on 30 seconds from a podium, players naturally think the picture is incomplete. But fans are judging the information available to them. They do not get access to those private conversations. They hear the public answer, watch the game, see the replay, and build an opinion from that. Neither group is necessarily acting irrationally. They simply have different evidence. That is why the Fever cannot solve this by telling people to stop creating narratives. The information gap itself creates narratives. The more important question is whether the organization can communicate clearly enough that disagreements remain about basketball instead of becoming arguments over what people are supposed to believe.
All around with these players coming out there and defending Stephanie White and the organization coming out and saying we're fully behind Steph, and I'm like, I get it. Like, as an org, you're gonna fully be behind your coach. I get it. But like, it's not the fact, like, first of all, I don't think there's anything to be gained by booing in person, because it's actually worse the opposite, because new fans are considered so bad that we all understand. If you've ever watched any sports, as soon as the fan turns on a coach,
and now the organization enters the story. Publicly supporting your coach is normal. In fact, anything else in the middle of a playoff push would create even more chaos. If the front office issued a weak or ambiguous statement, the immediate headline would become that Stephanie White had lost organizational support. So the Fever saying they are behind her should not surprise anybody. What matters is what happens after the statement. Does the team continue winning? Do players continue responding to her? Does the offense look organized late in close games? Does the defense adjust? Does the rotation make sense? Those are the questions that determine whether a coach survives long-term, not whether a social media argument is loud for 48 hours. The booing discussion is different because home crowd behavior has a direct emotional impact on players. If you are Aliyah Boston and you believe White has invested in you, defended you, and helped the team win, hearing even a small number of fans boo her during introductions is going to feel personal. That does not mean fans lose the right to criticize. It means criticism inside the arena sends a different message than criticism online. And there is a basketball cost too. Home court is supposed to reduce pressure, not add another layer of it before tip-off. If players walk onto their own floor already thinking about whether their coach is being targeted by the crowd, that is energy being spent on something completely separate from the opponent.
let's watch it.
I think when you are on your home floor and your team's getting announced and the coach is getting announced, I feel like there's no reason for any of that. I mean, we come out here and we do everything that we can to win. And I think Steph does a great job with us. Like, we love her and we appreciate her. And so to hear that, it was really annoying, honestly, and disrespectful. But for us, I mean, we kept the main thing, and we said we're going to come out here.
Boston's response is about as clear as it gets. She says the players love White, appreciate her, and viewed the reaction as disrespectful. That is meaningful, because locker room support is one of the strongest arguments in White's favor. Coaches can survive tactical criticism. They can survive angry fans. What becomes almost impossible to survive is losing the players. And right now, based on the public statements available in this source, there is no evidence of that. The opposite is happening. Boston defended her. Caitlin Clark has defended her. The organization has defended her. That does not erase coaching mistakes, but it changes the firing conversation dramatically. Fans often evaluate a coach by the decisions they can see: the timeout that was not called, the lineup that stayed on the floor too long, the defensive matchup that looked wrong. Players evaluate a coach through hundreds of interactions the public never sees. When those two evaluations collide, the front office has to decide whose evidence matters more. Usually, the answer is results. If Indiana keeps winning and the locker room stays together, ownership has very little incentive to make a dramatic change just because part of the fan base is angry. If the season collapses, those same controversial moments suddenly become part of a much larger case. That is how professional sports works. Winning does not make every criticism disappear, but it changes how much weight each criticism carries.
Booing your own team before a game while they're on a hot streak, like, there's nothing to be done. But in sports, when a coach loses the fans like that, and this is not online fans, this is the in-person fans that everybody has talked about how great they are. Like, when you're losing them, it's a problem. Like, it's a big problem when you're losing the in-person fans, because those in-person fans aren't chronically online. If you lose the chronically online people, who cares? But if you start losing your fans in arena...
This is where the original argument starts to shift. At first, the booing sounds like evidence that White had lost the building. That would be serious. Coaches know the difference between social media anger and thousands of paying fans turning against them in person. Once a home crowd collectively decides a coach has to go, the atmosphere becomes almost impossible to ignore. But notice the language here. The assumption is that the in-arena fans had turned. That assumption becomes crucial later, because the actual audio does not seem to support the idea of a massive coordinated reaction, and that distinction matters. One loud person can be heard by a player. One section can create a noticeable sound. A microphone can emphasize noise differently from how it feels across an entire arena. None of that means Boston imagined what she heard. It means we have to be careful before turning a few audible voices into a declaration that the whole fan base revolted. That is the danger of sports narratives moving faster than evidence. A clip gets described one way. People repeat the description. The description becomes accepted as the event itself. Then eventually somebody listens closely to the original footage and realizes the story may have grown larger than the moment.
It's over. But the problem is now, is that the narratives are so, like, the Fever is old WNBA. Kelly, Amber, Steph, the whole staff, they're all old WNBA. Like, the WNBA, in all of these leagues, in the NBA, they're like, look, we know it's a business. We know it's a business. In the WNBA, every time a player gets traded to a place they don't like to, or every time something happens to a player they don't like, they think it's a personal shot at them. Unfortunately, you can't say it's a business. You cannot use that phrase when it comes to the WNBA. You cannot use that phrase because the players and coaches and organizations don't understand that. And the entire FIFA organization is old WNBA. From when it wasn't a business, from when it was a charity. When basketball got played. So, losing the fans is going to guarantee Stephanie White keeps her job.
Now we hit the cultural argument underneath all of this. The speaker believes the Fever still operate with habits from an older version of the WNBA, before the league had this level of commercial attention. You can debate the fairness of that framing, but the business point is worth examining. The Fever are no longer dealing with a normal level of scrutiny. Caitlin Clark changed the scale of attention around this franchise. More viewers means more ticket buyers, more national coverage, more clips, more commentary channels, more criticism, and more people who do not approach the league with its old cultural norms. That is not automatically good or bad. It is simply what happens when a sports product expands, and growth forces organizations to change how they communicate. What worked when every press conference reached a relatively small core audience may not work when every sentence can be clipped, reposted, and debated by millions of people. You cannot control that environment. You can only communicate in a way that survives it. That is why White's phrase about people creating narratives landed so poorly with some viewers. Fans do create narratives, media creates narratives, teams create narratives too. That is sports. The only real defense against a misleading narrative is clearer evidence and better communication. But there is another side. A larger audience also brings people who treat every disagreement like a scandal. Every substitution becomes incompetence. Every injury update becomes a conspiracy. Every loss becomes grounds for termination. No coach can function if the standard is immediate emotional satisfaction after every game. So the Fever's challenge is not choosing between the old WNBA and the new audience. It is learning how to operate in a much larger marketplace without allowing the noise to dictate basketball decisions.
Oh, by the way, it doesn't really matter how bad he is. I'm fully convinced the Fever trade Caitlin Clark before they fire Stephanie White. That being said, there's a chance that both of them are still there. And we have actual footage of the booing here.
And that prediction about Clark being traded before White is fired is obviously the speaker's opinion, not an established organizational plan. There is no evidence in this source that Indiana has decided to trade Caitlin Clark or that it would choose its coach over its franchise star. But the fact that people are even framing the conversation that dramatically tells you how overheated this has become. Clark and White do not publicly appear to be on opposite sides. In fact, Clark has spoken in support of her. That is important because a genuine coach versus superstar conflict would be a completely different story. We do not have that here. What we have is a fan-coach credibility problem, a media storm around a controversial play, and a locker room that appears frustrated with how the outside conversation has developed. Those are real tensions, but they are not the same thing as an internal collapse. And now we get to the evidence that changes the temperature of everything.
The head coach for your Fever and Eastern Conference Coach of the Month, Stephanie White.
That's one dude. That's literally one dude.
God, I wish they'd fire her already.
That's just one dude. Oh my god. Is that all it was?
That reaction is the payoff. because he goes into the clip expecting confirmation that White had been heavily booed and instead immediately starts questioning the premise. Listen to the change in tone. This is someone who has spent the video criticizing White, and even he looks at the footage and says the reaction sounds like one prominent voice rather than an arena-wide revolt. That matters because it forces both sides to narrow the claim. Boston can still be correct that she heard booing and found it disrespectful. The critic can still be correct that the available recording does not sound like thousands of people united against White. Those statements can coexist, and once you establish that, the story becomes much less explosive. A coach was loudly booed by her home crowd suggests a franchise crisis. One or a small number of fans booed loudly enough for players to hear suggests an awkward moment during a week of controversy. Those are not remotely the same level of event. This is also a good example of why original footage matters. The clip does more than any argument on social media, because it lets you judge the scale for yourself. You do not have to rely on somebody telling you what the arena supposedly sounded like. You can hear the moment and decide whether the description matches the evidence.
Oh my god, they're talking about nothing. If you hear the background, it's like one dude booing. Oh my god, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? The actual footage I've seen. Are you kidding me? It's one person. Oh my god. It is one person. Obviously that one person was loud enough the players heard, and it's a small few.
And there is the correction in real time. He is not softening his criticism of White. He is correcting his own interpretation of the booing once he hears the footage. That is exactly what should happen when new evidence changes the picture. The most interesting part is that this correction actually makes Boston's frustration easier to understand, not harder. Imagine being a player, hearing a distinct boo during your coach's introduction, then walking into the media room and being asked about it. You are not measuring decibel levels or counting how many people participated. You heard somebody disrespect the coach you support on your home floor. Emotionally, your reaction makes sense, but once that quote leaves the room, the internet strips away scale. Players upset after coach booed quickly becomes Fever fans turn on Stephanie White. Then people who were not even in the arena start debating what the entire crowd supposedly believes. That is how one sound becomes a referendum. The organization should learn something from that. When the team is this famous, tiny moments no longer stay tiny. A comment after the game can become the next day's national storyline. An injury update can become a trust debate. A single audible fan can become the crowd. Precision matters because amplification is automatic.
Oh my god. After a game where you tell people to go to hell, one person boos you. Oh my god, I didn't even realize that. I just saw that there. Like, what the hell, man? What the hell? Like, that is not a...
So where does that leave Stephanie White? Not where either extreme wants to put her. The case for keeping her is straightforward. Her players publicly support her. The organization publicly supports her. Indiana has been competing at a high level despite constant scrutiny, and nothing in this transcript establishes that she has lost the locker room. Those are major points in a coach's favor. The case for criticizing her is also legitimate. Public communication is part of leadership. If fans repeatedly come away from press conferences feeling that the explanation does not match what they saw, that becomes a credibility issue, whether White intends it or not. Telling people to stop building narratives does not work if your own answers leave open spaces that people immediately fill. Then there is the tactical layer, which ultimately matters more than any press conference. Coaches are judged on whether they maximize their roster. Can Indiana close games cleanly? Can White make quicker adjustments when an opponent goes on a run? Can she manage Clark's minutes and health without the offense becoming predictable? Can she find the right balance between veteran trust and using younger players who provide energy? Those are basketball questions. If Indiana succeeds there, the public relations controversies will fade. If Indiana fails there in the postseason, every old criticism will be pulled back into the conversation. And that is why firing White right now based primarily on this episode would be difficult to justify from the evidence presented here. The supposedly massive booing appears much smaller on the available recording. The players are defending her rather than distancing themselves from her. The front office is backing her. You can dislike the messaging without pretending those facts do not exist. At the same time, White cannot dismiss the frustration as nothing more than outsiders trying to divide the team. Fans are reacting to things they actually hear and see. Some reactions become exaggerated, but the underlying criticism does not disappear merely because the loudest version of it is unfair. This franchise now exists in a different universe of attention. That comes with enormous upside, bigger crowds, bigger audiences, greater relevance, and a chance to become one of the defining teams of this era. It also means every weak answer gets magnified, every bad fourth quarter gets dissected. Every controversial play follows the team into the next press conference. The coach who succeeds in that environment has to do two jobs at once. She has to lead the basketball team, and she has to communicate with a fan base that wants transparency immediately. White appears to have the first part where it matters most, because her players keep publicly riding with her. The second part is where she keeps creating unnecessary friction. That is the actual lesson from this whole episode. The Fever do not appear divided inside the locker room. The divide is between how the people inside the building experience Stephanie White and how a portion of the audience experiences her. Players see the full relationship. Fans see the games, press conferences, and public statements. Until those two pictures look more similar, every controversy is going to reopen the same argument. And the irony is that the moment everyone treated as proof White had lost the fan base may have been the weakest evidence of all. The footage does not sound like an arena rebellion. It sounds like a small number of people being loud enough to be noticed. That should lower the temperature, because there is a huge difference between criticism and mutiny. But it should also send White a message. If one audible boo can create this much discussion, imagine what happens if the basketball results actually turn. Winning has protected this team from having to answer the hardest version of the coaching question. A bad postseason would remove that protection instantly. So this is not really about whether one fan booed Stephanie White. It is about whether she can preserve trust while coaching the most intensely watched team in the league. If the players believe in her and the wins continue, that should carry more weight than online outrage. If communication keeps creating fires and the results eventually fall apart, then the front office will have a much harder decision. Which side are you on? Do you judge Stephanie White primarily by the fact that her players clearly have her back, or has the public communication become enough of a problem that Indiana should seriously reconsider its future at head coach? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you want more Fever and WNBA breakdowns built around the actual clips instead of the loudest narrative like the video, and subscribe.